On this episode, the initial claim is that dinosaurs become invented to show physical proof of deep time and of evolution. We have a grand total of 0 fully complete dinosaur skeletons. 0.
That doesn't necessarily mean that the narrative that we've been taught surrounding dinosaurs is actually true. It just means that that one very unique creature did exist.
Raise your glass to mysteries, cocktails and conspiracies. Dive into these histories, cocktails and conspiracies. Raise your glass to mysteries, cocktails and conspiracies. Uncover those anomalies, cocktails and conspiracies.
Tired of dragging around that clunky old grill to every tailgate or campsite? Hitchfire has your back. Literally. Their rugged hitch-mounted grills are built for adventure. Just swing it out, fire it up, and get cooking anywhere your vehicle takes you. And I've got a code to hook you up. Use SFXDOTCOM at checkout to save 10% off your entire order. Head to hitchfire.com and upgrade your outdoor game. Hitchfire, built to burn wherever you roam. A world built on bones. Gigantic creatures we're told ruled the earth for millions of years. Their skeletons carefully pieced together in marble halls of museums. We marvel at their size, their power, and their mystery. We're told they explain the oil beneath our feet, the very history of life itself. But what if those bones were never real? What if they're just rocks shaped to look like monsters, stitched together by men with money, ego, and agenda? What if every towering T-Rex and swooping pterodactyl was nothing more than a carefully crafted illusion? A story so big, so entrenched, that questioning it would be a brand you a fool. Tonight we step into the dig sites, the scandals, and the shadows of paleontology itself. Tonight we ask the unthinkable. What if dinosaurs never existed at all? Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be, whether you are tuning in across the nation or around the world. From here to a millennia ago, my name is Shane Skwarek, here with my colleague, Mr. Philipps.
Hey, buddy. You know, I knew it was going to be a loud one today because you blew my eardrums out before we started recording. And I said, he's amped up.
To please, baby.
He's ready to rock. It's going to be a loud one.
I'm ready to rock. No pun intended. For our huge theme tonight as we dive into the fossil record. Cheers, and welcome to each of you to another episode of Cocktails and Conspiracies. Whoa! That's got a good one. That's got a kick tonight, baby. Let me get my coaster here so I don't ruin my desk. Now, Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
We sometimes go into these episodes super well prepared with a lot of thoughts. We sometimes go into these episodes very much in the same line of thought the whole way through, which sometimes makes it fun, sometimes makes it difficult. And so we sometimes go into the episodes where one of us has absolutely no idea what the other one is thinking.
Yeah, that would be tonight, my friend. When you proposed this, I said, okay, sure. And then after I did a little bit of research, I went, I'll tell everybody what I said to you. I hope you got some good stuff, because I can't get behind this.
Yeah. It's a theory that, it's another one of those theories that I don't want to exist, right? I'm really big on space. That was always one of my big things. Mm-hmm. And I'm huge on dinosaurs. I've loved dinosaurs since a little kid, infatuated with them. I tried to get my son infatuated with them when he was growing up. It's been at the root of so much. I love the idea of it. I was scrolling through some social media, as one always does, not very long ago, to be honest, and I came across this theory that I heard whispers of before, that what if dinosaurs aren't real? And, much like your response just a few minutes ago, and even in the text before this, it's like, oh God, here we go. Here's another dumb one. This is probably not going to have any weight to it whatsoever. Um, and that's kind of where I left it. And then I started doing a little more digging. And I'm not going to promise you all that I'm convinced here. It's not what this episode's going to be about. It's a topic that I thought was fun and I thought was worth exploring, because I think it teeters off into some different directions that may make you second guess what we know. And if not, I think it'll give you enough insight into the broader reasons for the conspiracy to make you wonder, why would they lie about that?
Well,
That's where
I'll
I'm
tell
gonna
you what,
start.
Shuggy Boy. I'll tell you what. This one's gonna do well. People are gonna watch it because I think it's stupid. So, it's
That is
worth it.
true.
It's
That is
worth it.
typically how it goes. That is typically
Whatever
how it goes.
episode that we come away feeling great about, something we were super interested in, fucking 10 people watch it. This one, I think, is dumb from Jump Street, and it's gonna get millions of views. So, let's go. Take me down that rabbit hole, baby.
That's it, baby. Do you know when the dinosaurs were first discovered?
I'm gonna say hundreds of million... Oh, discovered?
Discovered.
Oh, all right. I apologize.
Okay.
Not hundreds
When
of
did
million
they
years ago.
exist?
Hundreds of millions of years ago.
And when were they discovered?
I want to say the early, literally arbitrary, early 1920s. I have no fucking idea.
Okay, a little earlier than that. It was actually the 1800s, early 1800s,
Okay.
about 1842. Was the very first dinosaurs were discovered. By name
1842.
1842 was the Megalosaurus, and a man named Richard Owen was the guy that actually discovered them there. Never in history before that were dinosaurs ever brought up in record. Never in history were they brought up in ancient texts, and never were they stumbled upon as a giant bone sitting around. So just an interesting little fact there.
Dude, could you imagine? Could you imagine being the first person to find fucking dinosaur fossils? Like
Amazing,
a big
right?
one, like a big T-Rex or
Yeah.
or what's the other really, really big brontosaurus? That you must have been like, what the fuck monster is this?
Right.
That must have been wild, dude.
Well, so that's actually a really great question for you. Is like, when you're a paleontologist here and you're digging through the ground and whatnot, how do you envision that they find this? Like, tell me. And I know this isn't a scientific answer, but from your perception, because this is going to be my perception too going into this, how do you envision that they're finding these dinosaur bones?
My guess would be it's got to be most of them are just compiled on top of one another, right? I would imagine that a lot of them is just a mesh of bones, right? Like I highly doubt that most of them they're finding like laid out in this beautiful form where they could easily put them back together to create what you see in museums. I would venture to guess it's just a mix mosh cluttered shit ton of bones
Sure.
or
And now,
fossils.
when they find these fossils, these bones, whatever, well, I guess there's a distinguishment, but when they find the dinosaur bones, for the sake of discussion, even fast forward a little bit, right? So early 19th century, in the 1800s, they find it. They make this discovery, so you can't really dictate it right there. But since then, they've obviously made many more discoveries that lean in towards the idea that dinosaurs existed. How do they know they're dinosaurs?
That's a great question.
What testing
I
do you
mean,
think they've done to know that they're dinosaurs?
That's a great question. My guess would be the first time we came across one, we went, I don't know what the fuck this is, and we tried to assemble it and said, we've never seen that before. Granted, how do you assemble something that you've never seen before? I don't know. That kind of comes into question. I would venture to guess by now we have some kind of, I don't know, can you DNA test a fossil? I don't think you can you? There's got to be some
Well,
kind of
we'll get
carbon
into that.
dating or
Yeah.
something into that regard. My guess, I'm going to say carbon dating. Although carbon dating is not going to tell you DNA, it's just going to tell you how old something is. So I don't know. It's a good question.
Sure. When we dive into these conspiracy theories, especially some of these fun ones, a lot of the same questions or themes tend to come up. When we talked about the Titanic, right? There was a lot of motives behind the Titanic, and what was one of the, I guess the clutch or crutch points of that storyline? Why when you talk about the Titanic being intentionally crashed, why would that have been?
That's
And
a
I
real
promise
question
this is
for
going
me?
somewhere.
Okay, all right.
Objectively, it's a question.
No,
Yes,
that's
and you
fine,
can
that's
answer
fine.
it.
Yeah, no, so, it was, there were some very powerful figures that were opposed to the Fed, the Federal Reserve.
So
That's
there's
probably
other
my
things
favorite one.
happening
There's,
that were going on that
exactly,
was
there were
motivated
ulterior
by.
motives.
Right.
Exactly.
So in the early 1800s, around 1842, the first dinosaur bones were discovered. The Megalosaurus, again, by his name is Richard Owen. What ends up happening, not much longer, is Darwinism's theory of evolution becomes very prominent only a few years later in the 1850s. Now, at
Hmm.
this point in science, Darwinism is starting to take hold. The theory of evolution. People are heavily religious, right? And they want to believe in their gods and their beings and their creators. The science community is blossoming. Now, like anything, you can question the motives there. I do believe in science. I believe there's a lot of merit in there, but I think
Do you
we've
trust the
established.
science?
Exactly. Do you trust the science? And if the year 2020 has taught us anything, science is often motivated by the highest bidder. And so I think that's a key fact to keep in mind here. And a key fact when we talk about all conspiracies is there money involved? If you follow the money trail, it can give you answers. The claim, the initial claim, is that dinosaurs become invented to show physical proof of deep time and of evolution, because immediately when you prove that, it dispels the idea of this creator because the timelines are off. Okay?
I'm
It's
following you.
suspicious, again, as I mentioned before, that in all of human history, nobody ever noticed dinosaurs or have any written record of anything about dinosaurs until Victorian scientists happen to find them. A little suspicious. Not completely outrageous, but again, when you
Hmm.
think about the excavating that have been done in ancient ruins, right? And these deep and we can't say that that they didn't dig deep enough, because we've now found cities like Göbekli Tepe or Taran Tepe or some of these other ancient cities over in Turkey and around the world. You know, if you go down to South America, we found that they've dug deep into the earth. They've created underground caverns, but there's never been any mention of these larger than life things. So just an interesting tidbit there. The tie-in, I'm not going to say it's hard evidence. It's not concrete. Certainly not a convincing point for me, but you got to start to think about that.
That's interesting. It's an interesting thought. If you think about, and we're going to cover this on an upcoming episode, whether you like it or not. We're gonna cover the labyrinth in Egypt,
There we go.
which Ben, whose last name I'm gonna completely fuck this up. Believe it's something Ben Van Kerkeren. I don't know. Sorry, buddy, I messed your name up. Proposes that it's somewhat like 200 meters deep. That's deep, dude. Now, granted, we're talking about one specific site, but it is massive, so it's deep and it's massive. You'd think if there was something there, they would have found it.
Well, that's where this all starts, right? Is just how does nobody else find it? And I think there's a number of different ways that we can attribute to that, for sure. Where I go next is a little bit later in the 1800s. There starts this bone war scandal. There's a guy named Edward Drinker Cope and Othniel Charles Marsh, and they become these prolific, popular paleontologists. They start stealing fossils, bribing diggers, dynamiting sites, and exaggerating discoveries to outdo each other. It becomes sort of a race to the top to say, who is finding the most fossils, right? Cope famously reconstructs, and I don't even know what this dinosaur is, an Elasmosaurus, putting the head on the tail. And when he's later corrected, saying that's wrong, he refuses to admit to his mistake.
Oh, shocking.
Marsh is accused of dynamiting to sabotage sites and salting digs with fake bones to throw off Cope. And both men well over exaggerated their discoveries in the papers that they were writing, describing dinosaurs that were later deemed completely invalid based on scraps. So from the very jump in the early 1800s, when the question arises, what would the motive be? We're already seeing that we're driven by fame and we're driven by
Mhm.
money. Out of the gate, they're already making things up. Okay. You took a breath like you were going to say something there.
Well, I was going to say, but these two guys were not the very two first paleontologists to discover dinosaur fossils. Like
These were
they've
basically
already...
the two main guys now in the late 1800s. The very first guy is the Richard Owen guy, and then it now moves on to kind of your bone wars, as they called them, in the 1870s to the 1890s. These two guys become like the premier guys. These are your top two going
So
head
it's
to
early
head,
on.
going to war.
Gotcha.
Very early on in the process here. Okay, so I want to set the foundation here because I really want people to understand that throughout history, we're always motivated by greed, right? There is a monetary incentive for you to make these discoveries. It's not like people are digging in their backyard, they find something, and then all of a sudden, hey guys, look what I got here, and we're moving on. It's not the only instance. It's not like it's exclusive to dinosaurs either. There's plenty of historical evidence of science and scientists, again, doing things for money or faking it. Another example that's outside the realm of dinosaurs is the Piltdown Man hoax. Again, not a dinosaur, but he's often cited. There was evidence of a missing link between apes and humans, and this hoax was basically revealed as a forgery that used orangutan and human bones to sort of merge this gap between apes and humans to prove that there was an evolution between the two. Again, leading into that evolutionary theory that now pops up. This now happens in the early 1900s, that 1912 to 1953. It fooled the entire scientific community for decades, where now based all of your science off of this missing link that was faked, right? Because they were trying to prove evolution. Again, evolution is now populating in the 1800s. Why would people make it up? Here they go. Here they're doing it right here. It's to discredit religion, right? Again, thinking conspiracy, not the realist part right now. You can make your own opinions from that, surmise your own results from that. But if you're going to fake that, you're going to fake this link between apes and humans to prove that we're all the same, which, by the way, has since been disproven. And we talked about that in our Denisovan episode when we were talking about the great apes, Gigantopithecus and whatnot, that the human link has went back further and further. We see it happen in science all the time now, where the lifelines of humans continue to extend further back than we ever knew was possible.
Yeah.
So again, we're breaking science there.
It's now believed that Neanderthal was more of a cousin of Homo sapien rather than a Homo sapien evolving from Neanderthal.
Exactly. Neanderthal was the other word I was looking for too. Exactly. Precisely. So again, chronological history of science faking things to drive home a point or a theory that we are then educating the rest of the people on. And this becomes a broader issue that I take sometimes with the scientific community or really at the educational institution at all, period, is we judge our education based on books read. And a lot of the times you'll have people that become experts because they go to school for it. Nothing against that. I went to school for my whole college career as well. I got a degree, and I will be the first to tell you that what I did in my senior year was not, I mean, it was the same crap I did in high school. I quite literally used my high school notes to do it. And I think people are too often, because they went to school for something, afraid to admit that what they went to school for isn't the most recent, most up-to-date thing. Again, losing that digress. Another example is the Archaeoraptor scandal in 1999, more recently. There's a fossil smuggled out of China, hailed by National Geographic as the missing link between dinosaurs and birds. Again, turns out to be a forgery, cobbled together from two different species and glued together. Obviously, a major embarrassment for Nat Geo and paleontology. This is not the only instances in history. There's plenty more. I've got a list of them right here. A Brontosaurus was long thought to be fake. It was a composite skeleton, mistakenly given a new name, even though they found the same dinosaur. They just named this a new one. A Nanotyrannus was believed to be a new species, and they found it out to be a baby Tyrannosaurus rex. Dozens of other species named during the Bone Wars, we were talking about in the late 1800s, again, turned out to be junk classification based on fragments. And of course, there's a black market full of forgeries and fossils that are especially from China that are happening constantly. There is a pattern of lies that happens in paleontology. What's to say that it didn't start on a lie and perpetuate that lie the whole way through?
I'm gonna say the lots of bones and fossils that we found all over the world.
I'm glad
can
you
we go
said
with that one?
Mr. Phillips. All right,
Let's go with that one.
Let's go there. Let's go there. When This is a really vague question for me to ask you. I was going to ask, when do you think bones, if you had to guess around what events, around what requirements, around what necessities are bones typically discovered?
Oh, dude, I have absolutely no fucking idea. I mean, I know it's not just any you know, specimen that dies is going to then produce a fossil, right? I know some of the I guess geographic and or like it there are different types of wow, I sound dumb right now. There are other factors that come into play, such as it needs to find its way underground, it needs to be there for a very long time.
It's not where I was really taking you with that
Save me
question.
here, buddy.
And
Save me here, buddy.
I knew this was a bad question to pose, but I guess the better way for me to say, like, would it surprise you that almost every single major dinosaur discovery, or really every dinosaur discovery period, often has occurred either right before funding deadlines or in regions that are tied to paleontology tourism? It doesn't just happen because you went out today and you were digging up in your backyard and you found a dinosaur bone. It happens because your funding's about to run out. And in order to get new funding, you need to discover something. And then miraculously, almost every single time, every single major discovery happens right around that time. Just coincidentally, just as funding's about to run out.
Okay.
Or when tourism in a specific area that is very geared towards paleontology, where they say they've now found all of these dinosaur bones, it's a nest of them, whatnot. It just so happens that that's the same exact places when that starts to dip off, they make a new discovery. Is that just happenstance? Is that coincidence?
That's interesting.
I don't believe in coincidence, Mr. Phillips. Not that often.
Yeah, look, that's a very interesting note. Well, we're gonna leave that as a very interesting note.
Again, follow the money trail, right? We're talking about forgery. We're talking about making money. We're talking about perpetuating a mindset. And now all of a sudden we're talking about funding for scientific projects, and we're talking about funding for tourism. Follow the money. And this is where like my mind started to churn a little bit here. It's like, okay, well, you also said there's no possible way, right? Like we found all of these bones, and we've got these skeletons that are pieced together. How many fully intact skeletons do you think we have of dinosaurs?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. In a bit of research that I did do, I know that we have some that are between like 90 and 95% complete, according to the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what I'll give you. That's what I got.
We have a grand total of 0 fully complete dinosaur skeletons. 0. Not 1. 0. There's not one single fully intact skeleton of a dinosaur anywhere on the face of planet Earth. The most intact is the Field Museum's Sioux, which is a T-Rex, and is about 90%. You're right. Yep. You're right. We did see that.
We did see that, yeah.
Good
I completely forgot about that. Yeah. Now, hold
Either
on. I want to
that-
play devil's advocate.
Go ahead. Let's do it.
Pause.
Yeah.
Isn't it true, because my friend on the internet, who's a very smart person, who's named ChatGPT, tells me that you're correct. We don't actually have a single skeleton, if you want to call it
0.
that is
We have 0
100% complete. Right, but that percentage of bones that are missing are like tiny little bones that would be, at the end of a tail or a claw or things of that nature. That's what I gathered from some of the research I did.
The average dinosaur skeleton that we have is between 45 to 60% complete, which means there is a lot of speculation that goes from the bones, the fossils, into the actual fully constructed model that you're creating. A lot of artistic freedom, which all of a sudden materializes when you get into Hollywood and pop culture and movies like Jurassic Park, where this starts to perpetuate. Cartoons before that as well. And, there's been discussions of it being birds and whatnot, and how they're supposed to be feathered and how they made conscious choices on the way they look. The only one that is anywhere close to complete is this Sioux, this T-Rex, which again is a lot of fillers and resin casts that have built out this skeleton. In smaller museums, almost all of them are plaster or fiberglass replicas. There's no real bones anywhere.
Right.
Which that was probably the most staggering piece of evidence for me to come to the realization that like we're building this narrative of dinosaurs, and I'm not going to go into like the different the different eras of dinosaurs, because Jurassic Park obviously throws that up to the wind. They merge all
Right,
these
right.
dinosaurs together. They're over different periods of time. I'm not going to really go into that because I know there's like mishmash in that as well. But you're building these eras of dinosaurs and you're drafting how they look, and you're doing that off of what? One
Well,
skeleton. One.
So,
And they have a repertoire of hundreds of them, which again, you're saying there's bits and pieces, but are they? Because I asked you before, how do we know? And you said we can't do DNA, right?
I don't know if we could do DNA. I'm not sure. That I don't know. However, before you move on, I want to continue to play devil's advocate real quick. Okay, just roll with me for a moment. Well, I'm just going to use the T-Rex as an example because it's probably the most well-known dinosaur, right? You have a T-Rex. I find it over here. Let's call it T-Rex A. Okay. And I'm missing... I've only got 60% of the fossils to construct the skeleton, right? As we just mentioned, well, how do you know what the rest of it looks like? Well, what if you find T-Rex B over here, and granted, it's not always going to be a perfect match, but that 40% that you were missing from A is over here at B. And just by looking at how it's constructed, you can then piece together, hey, well, that bone would go there, and that bone would go there. Granted, it's not perfect, especially, and granted, when I say that, I'm going back to the first time anybody's ever done this, right? Because it would be the first time, so how do you know? There has to be some trial and error, right? But that seems like a very plausible way to construct the skeleton, no?
It is, but how do you know they're from the same species?
Well, I don't know, this is what these people do for a living, bro. I'm trusting Mr. Paleontologist that he knows that A and B are the same species. I don't fucking know.
Do you know what a hypothesis is?
Yes, I know what a hypothesis is. I
What's
went
the
to fucking
definition?
school.
What's the
It's an
definition of
educated
hypothesis?
guess.
It's an educated guess.
Exactly, it's an educated
And
guess.
science is based off of educated what?
Guesses.
Guesses. Isn't that fascinating? You've commented a couple times, and I'm gonna jump around in my notes here because I was gonna get to this, and I think this is a nice segue into it. DNA. Can you extract DNA from a dinosaur? Is this like Jurassic Park where they pop the DNA out of the dinosaur and they can create their own?
I hope so. I hope so.
Hope so.
If they can, I hope they could do it one day.
So we have extracted DNAs from mammoths and from other like extinct species, right? Different mammals and reptiles and whatnot, and we've been able to kind of reproduce their genetic sequence. Dinosaurs are of an ilk from a very long time ago. Their DNA is gone. DNA is not very sustainable, and I'm trying to find the actual metric here. I had it somewhere here, and I can't find it. Oh, there we go. Where is it? Okay, so yeah, I don't have the number right ahead of me, and I don't want.
What is it, like percentage of available DNA, or what is it?
Basically, right.
Gotcha.
If you had to guess, how much true dinosaur DNA has ever been found?
I'm gonna guess slim to none, just because of the condition and age of it. Right? You mentioned mammoths. Right, when we can extract those DNAs, they're found in ice in cold
they're found
climates,
frozen in ice. Right.
Exactly. Right. Where
the answer is none. There's zero.
Yeah.
We've actually there's never been any true dinosaur DNA that's ever been found. So we don't have a complete dinosaur. We've never had any true dinosaur DNA that's ever been found. DNA degrades very, very quickly, much faster, obviously, than bones or fossils. Under the most ideal conditions, frozen, dry, and protected, DNA might last hundreds of thousands of years, and in very, very, very rare cases, up to 1 million years. Dinosaurs went extinct about 66 million years ago. So it's way beyond even the most rarest of cases of DNA's survival window. So when you're looking at what these dinosaurs are, when you're extracting these bones, right? What are you actually extracting? You have absolutely no idea. To your point, how do you fit these things together? You're quite literally grabbing rocks from the ground and you're going to tell me that they're piecing together. You're making it up. Do you know what a fossil is? Like what the definition of? I know you know what it is. Do you know what the definition of a fossil is?
I guess the easiest way it's almost like it's rock essentially with an imprint of a bone on it.
It
is
is
essentially what it is.
There is
in
no
in
bone,
a term.
right? The bone is
Right.
gone.
It's not an
The
actual
bone
bone.
degrades. The organic material disappears, right? It's replaced by minerals. That's the whole permineralization process. That's what it is. The structure is bone-like. It looks bone-like, but chemically, it is a rock. So you are quite literally digging a rock out of the ground, a cast of a rock. And what they're doing is they're chipping away at these rocks to make these skeletons that they're then going to put up in less than 50% completion into a museum. And then they're going to patch all the rest of that up with plaster. And in most cases, they don't even put those rocks in the museum. They just plaster it all out. And so when you're looking at the creation of these dinosaurs and you're saying that we can pull a T-Rex from over here and we can pull a T-Rex over here and we can merge them together. Well, of course, because when you're using that chisel and you're cracking that thing over and you need it to go like this, but it's going like this, well, all you got to do is a couple more chips, or you just throw on a plastic mold and you make it look like whatever the hell you want it to make it look like. And so when you start to factor in it and pull all these different threads and bring them all together, Mr. Phillips, you've got a species that we cannot definitively prove ever existed because we don't have their DNA. You can't ever prove they existed because we don't actually have a single full skeleton of any of them anywhere. We don't actually have their bones because we have rocks that look like fossils. Sure, you can say what you want about science. It is what it is. We don't know. We're guessing. 66 million years ago, you got an imprint of something in there. Maybe this fucking thing stepped on something and a molten piece of lava. You don't know. It could have been anything, right? We're speculating. And the evolution of dinosaurs is speculated to be what? Do you remember the animals?
What was it? Birds? Were they closely tied to birds? Or
Crocodiles and alligators.
Right.
Or chickens.
Or reptiles.
Chickens. Now, can you imagine a Tyrannosaurus Rex evolving to a chicken?
Yeah, that one's tough for me to...
Is that not outrageous?
Yeah, that's a little...
A Tyrannosaurus Rex, which, by the way, we're speculating now about what these creatures were doing. We've got a Tyrannosaurus Rex. We've got the Velociraptors. Like, these are some of the meanest things. Velociraptors were pack animals. How the hell do you know that they were a pack animal?
Yeah,
how do you know?
See, that's the kind of shit, right? When they get into things like that, you know, what they ate or how they hunted and how they lived. Dude, fucking come on, man.
All of a sudden, you're building a story around it because it sells movies, it sells TV shows, it pushes the theory of evolution, which kind of steps on religious groups and makes them lose their power, which we've talked about at length in other episodes here. All of the questions, all the things we think we know about dinosaurs, there is not one of them, not one thing that's ever been written about a dinosaur we can say definitively. Not one. Not one.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you there.
And I'm going to include the big skeleton key. What do we say comes from dinosaurs? Why the big theory of dinosaurs existed? It's a finite resource.
Oil.
Comes from fossils. Fossil fuels. Right? Have you ever heard this? That the death of all the dinosaurs is what creates all the fossils? What's fascinating is dinosaurs roamed the earth 66 million years ago for millions and millions of years, right? And they all went extinct, all suddenly, right? A comet, a meteor hit the earth, wiped everything out. It just dropped dead immediately, which would have allowed them all fossilized. How come when you built your house, you never found a dinosaur bone? How come when you dug on the beach, you didn't? How come we haven't found just mounds and mounds and mounds of dinosaur bones everywhere?
It's a good question.
Right. It's all gone. How come it's only select pieces and it's never full, right? Like there is no evidence. There's no evidence of people talking about it. There's no evidence of slews of bones, except again, in very curated situations. So we start to talk about fossils, right? We start to talk about oil and fossil fuels. The biogenic origin, the actual accepted origin is oil is formed from the remnants of ancient plankton, algae, and plant matter, not dinosaurs specifically, not fossils specifically, but prehistoric organic material, anything, right? Over millions of years, of course, heat and pressure convert this organic matter into hydrocarbons, and that's then what's taught in schools and accepted by most geologists. So nowhere in the definition of a fossil fuel does it ever talk about fossils, dinosaurs, or any semblance of a bone. Because if it did, Mr. Phillips, and I've posited this to you before, why aren't humans a renewable energy source? When we die,
That's a good
why aren't
point.
our bones ground up into some sort of oil, or degraded in a process that would turn our organic matter into this oil? We'd have unlimited resources there, wouldn't we?
Yeah, that's a very good point.
There's an abiogenic petroleum theory, and we're going to go into oil a little bit here, and this is going to be a little off key, but I thought it was worthwhile bringing this kind of stuff up. There's a prevailing theory that oil's a finite resource, and that has subsequently funded wars. It's set up some countries to kind of sit at the top of the food chain, and other countries an excuse to just go in there and wipe out some other shithole country for a number of reasons. I'm sure you can rattle off a couple of those wars that we've had over this quote unquote finite resource. But that was always, we never went to those countries for those finite resources, did we? We always went for another reason.
Well, yes, if that's what you want to believe.
Right.
Yes.
And
If you
so-
believe the legacy media, sure.
If you believe the legacy media issue. Now, why is it so important to perpetuate the idea that oil is finite?
I don't know. Why is it?
Oh, it creates power, right? It creates structure. There's all of these oil companies can be routed back to a small handful. Literally, you can count them on two hands of families that now control the power infrastructure of the entire world. And this is a topic for another day, but when you start to look into all of the alternative energy sources, right? Whether it's wind, whether it's hydrogen, whether it's really just water,
Solar,
hydrogen
whatever it may be.
extracted. Any of these alternative theories that have powered engines, or like you look at Nikola Tesla, who's extracting energy out of the earth, right? All of the inventors mysteriously vanished. They died. Something happened to them, or their patents were all bought up and they disappeared. And you always see all these big companies that, I'm not even going to name some of them, but like the Exxons, the Mobiles, whatever, all the big major oil companies. They're all talking, oh, we want to save the environment, blah, 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 blah. They have all the researchers in the world, and yet they haven't come up with these renewable energy sources until now. All of a sudden, green is in, and they're starting to do that. There is no scarcity. There is no power. There is no ability to kind of control money if you know that that resource is infinite. The United States has oil reserves in Alaska they can tap into, and our country can have free energy for centuries with the amount of oil that is there. Why wouldn't we tap that? Well,
One would
would it?
imagine.
Because you have to create artificial scarcity here.
Sure.
So that goes into some of these
That's how you control
alternative
the market.
theories. That's how you control the market, precisely. Scarcity. And that's why they try to take over all these little shithole countries, is because they want to control it and give their perception. Again, there is oil there. Obviously, they're drilling the oil, and eventually those reserves will dry up. But is it drying up from the planet? And that's what I want to talk about. A couple of these theories really quickly. The abiogenic petroleum theory is arguing that oil is not biological in origin at all, and it forms actually deep within the Earth's mantle through chemical reactions involving carbon, hydrogen, and heat. Theory suggests oil is a naturally occurring renewable resource that continuously seeps upward through the crust. Supporters are pointing to oil deposits found in places with little to no fossil record as supposed evidence. Soviets actually talked about this. Soviet geologists talked about this during the Cold War and perpetuated that the United States, their fossil fuel theory, was just propaganda to justify that scarcity. Now, the idea that this resource was limited started in the Cold War in the 1900s. So again, something to think about. Oil, it was not the first time it was found. It's obviously been in history. We've seen it surface through ancient texts as well. Well, maybe not ancient texts, but I thought that was an interesting theory, Mr. Phillips, because when you put it into perspective, what do they say the Earth is on the inside?
It's hot rock, liquid rock, essentially.
It's a liquid rock. It's this
Molten.
heat source, molten rock, right? And you look at what happens with like volcanoes. You look at what happens with the Earth's crust. It shifts around, volcanoes explode. It's creating all of these different natural chemical reactions, right? What is to say that oil isn't just the byproduct of those chemical reactions? That the heat from that Earth is maybe disintegrating this organic matter and it's creating this reaction that is spitting it out And that's why oil continues to be found all over the earth and sometimes comes back to wells that were dried up. Now, there's refill theories on that too. Again, scarcity things, but I'm not going to go into that. This isn't an oil discussion entirely here. There's a biblical one as well that tie a lot of the organic matter to Noah's floods. I'm not really going to kind of dive into that too much, but the idea that oil is this biological lubricant for or creating by the earth itself, replenishing itself all the time. I don't know, man. Like it seems to make a lot more sense to me than just a bunch of dead things that vanished. And if there's one thing we've learned about Earth is that everything is cause and effect, right? Like everything in Earth, like if you go into a forest, right, and you get bit by some super venomous snake, it just so happens that the cure grows in a plant 50 feet away.
Right.
That plant might not be anywhere else on Earth, but that snake is also nowhere else on Earth. But they're both in the same spot, right? Earth, when you look naturally, there's always a solution to every problem within its environment. Am I off the beaten path here? You're just giving me a lot of like head nods and shakes here.
No, I'm getting you. I'm following you. I'm following you.
Okay. I'm going to bring us back to the dinosaurs here. We talked about the DNA. We talked about the fossil records. We talked about the bone wars. We talked about the skeletons. We talked about Hollywood. We talked about oil. We could go into the religious narratives. I'm not a big religious guy, so I don't really give too much of a shit on that. I don't really buy into that the Earth is only 6,000 years old personally. I think there's enough evidence that would detract from that.
I think that's a silly statement.
I think we've discussed at length too that we believe that the creation could also be another species. So I don't think we need to necessarily go into there.
What if it's Nephilim bones? Ooh.
Well,
Ooh.
That was the next place I was going to take us. It's not Nephilim necessarily, but that's a good one. Have you ever seen the Chinese calendar?
Maybe when I was in school, but I haven't seen it in a very long time.
Is that lunar soul? How can I pull this thing up here?
Are you bringing us the dragons? Are we going to do dragon talk?
Oh, you son of a bitch. You son of a bitch.
Did I guess it? Did I guess it?
I'm going to bring up a picture of the Chinese calendar here, the Chinese zodiac right here. Okay. When you look at this calendar, for those that are listening to us, I apologize. There's a rat, there's an ox, there's a tiger, there's a rabbit, there's a dragon, there's a snake, there's a horse, there's a goat, there's a monkey, a rooster, dog, and pig. What doesn't belong?
One of these things is not like the other. Wasn't that like an old Sesame Street song?
One of these things, yeah. That
just doesn't belong.
Street,
yeah.
I mean,
obviously, it's the dragon, right?
You very much spoiled it already.
It's the dragon, my friend.
It's peculiar that there are ancient myths of dragons and these mythological creatures, so much so that the Chinese would put this and root their entire culture around dragons. I mean, it's everywhere in Chinese culture.
Yeah, you're right.
And it's the only thing that, quote unquote, doesn't exist, right? There's thoughts, and I don't know that we're going to dive too deep into this, but like if dinosaurs exist, why would dragons have not exist, right?
I think it's a very valid point.
Why would we dispel that so much? Because that aligns a lot more with the idea of a bird and a reptile. And so there's a school of thought that the reason we haven't found a plethora of dinosaur bones, or a reason we haven't necessarily been able to piece them all together, is that maybe they're, number one, a lot more recent than we think, and that what cultures wrote about, again, through all of these ancient texts, there's a recurring theme of dragons. And maybe what they actually were is dinosaurs didn't exist, but dragons in some way did. And it's something that I've, again, always laughed at. Mm-hmm. But when you look at what we have, and you look at all these ancient scriptures, I don't know that that's out of the realm of possibility.
So maybe dragons are dinosaurs and dinosaurs are dragons. They're one and the same.
And maybe there's just not a repository of dinosaurs to the degree that we think there are.
Right.
And
No,
I don't
that's a
know what
good
the
point.
reason, I don't know what the reason would be that you change that around, right? There's a lot that happens with, yeah,
What I was going to say, and I've said this a million times on this show, is that people just, they don't really just make shit up for no
they don't make
reason
shit
at
up.
all whatsoever, right? So going back to the Chinese calendar, why is the dragon there? For no reason at all whatsoever. It doesn't make any sense.
And why is there no written record of dinosaurs or anything like them in human history? But there is of dragons the whole way through.
That is
Now,
very,
whether they're
very
an Earth
interesting.
creature or an alien creature, I don't know, but it exists, right? And so perhaps if you want to believe that the bones do exist and they're not just rocks that are formulated, perhaps that's the excuse that you can kind of go with. That's what you can land on. There's also the Smithsonian angle, who has really kind of taken precedence a lot in a lot of these discussions lately, especially when we talk about archaeology, paleontology, or really anything that has to do with digging up old things. And there's a giant skeleton theory that we talked about a little bit in the Neanderthal episode, where the Smithsonian has been claimed to have hidden or destroyed fossils. They are very much funded by the U.S. government on black budget projects, and because they are a private institute, they actually cannot be FOIA'd at all. And so when they do things, they can do things and not answer to anybody about that, which obviously creates it's a pretty big loophole. I mean, it's effectively a government contract at that point. That's the same one, as some of your big ones that are probably creating these alien ships that we see. And so, are you painting a narrative? Because they are supposedly in possession of a bunch of dinosaur bones, but they don't show them and they don't display them. And when you ask about them, they pretend they don't exist. But there's been people that have found them. I mean, there's newspaper articles. Literally in 1908, a guy reported to find these giant human bones, not dinosaur bones, I know, in Wisconsin, and he got him confiscated by the Smithsonian, never saw him again. Like, there's regular stories that go on and on about this, where people would give them to Smithsonian and then go back to find out about it, and they just pretend they don't even know what happened. I don't know. What do you mean? Whenever there's those types of cover-ups, I always have to ask myself why, right? I don't believe in coincidences, and I don't believe that people are inherently that stupid to make the same mistakes. And I forgot which episode it was. It was one of the most recent ones we did. I almost tend to look at the Smithsonian like it's our version of the Vatican archives, and that they're hiding some history for some reason. I don't know what the reason is, but I suspect that a few things could be at bay here. And before I say what that is, I'm going to kind of let you give me your overall thoughts so far.
In regard to the whole theory, or you're talking about why they would do that?
I'll summarize for you. No dinosaur DNA ever recovered. DNA breaks down after a million years. Dinosaurs 66 million years old. What we call dinosaur bones are fossils. They're rocks shaped like a bone. They're not real bones. Most of the skeletons are all composites. The average is 50% or less are actually not composites. Filled in with missing parts, reinterpreted decades later. They'll change the designs of the dinosaurs.
Yes.
Brontosaurus was invented, dismissed, and then reaccepted. Other species the same ways. It just seems to be storytelling with bones. Is
Wouldn't it
kind
just
of my
take one?
giant summary.
Wouldn't it just take one though? Like, just think about it this for a second, right? And look, I don't disagree with you, right? The evidence against them is based upon this conversation is mounting. It's certainly interesting. Forget all that for a moment. Wouldn't it take just one fossil to convince you?
To convince me?
Yeah. Now, granted, if you could verify its source and you knew without a shadow of a doubt it wasn't a forgery, if you were there, you saw it pulled from the ground, whatever it might be, wouldn't it take just one? And there's a reason why I'm asking you that question.
There's two parts to that answer for me. Yes and no. Yes, it would take just one, and then I would look at Sue the T-Rex to say something existed of this capacity. The no portion comes in because I've become very cynical from this show, but before this show as well, that sometimes we don't get the whole story. And I think seeing Sue, even if I can verify that, doesn't create or doesn't solidify the rest of the story for me. It's a fragment of a myth. And we do that a lot in the stories that we tell, where we always say this, right? Like, you can have a narrative and you can poke 1,000 holes in it and it's accepted. If you have a conspiracy that's based on one thing and you expand it out a little bit and you build a story and you poke one hole in it, it gets dispelled. And I think the same is applicable here in a way, because you're building a story around one thing, right? And we're expected to accept that, even though all the other pieces don't make any sense. And to me, there's got to be a motive behind why you'd want us to believe all of it, instead of just saying, hey, we've got this one really rare creature. Why can't it just be that one species? Why does it have to be all these other things? And I have a theory on why that is, but I'm going to let you finish what your thought was, because you asked me a question there.
Well, no, actually, you went exactly where I was going to go with it, right? Like, for me, it would just take one. And again, right, I'm saying, like, I would need to see it. And let me backtrack a little. I'm not saying that I because of this conversation, it's not that I don't believe dinosaurs exist. But in terms of being able to see the proof and not have to question it, if you will, or at least not as question it as much, it would take just one. Because even if, and I guess that's kind of arbitrary, right? Because if we're talking about a small bone like this, you know, when I'm thinking bone, maybe I should elaborate a little more. I'm thinking like a fucking skull. Like a T-Rex skull. You pull a T-Rex skull out of the ground, I'm fucking believing it, baby. You don't need to pull 7 million more of them out of the ground. I'm believing it. I see it, right? Having said that, that doesn't necessarily mean that the narrative that we've been taught surrounding dinosaurs is actually true. It just means that that one very unique creature did exist. And granted, I don't necessarily mean just one. I do believe that there are different species, different shapes, different sizes, just like there are different kinds of sharks and, many different, species of fucking name that animal. And there's many different frogs, right? That's kind of where I go with that, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that's always bothered me with fossils, and maybe I'll sound like an idiot for saying this, is that, like, there have been billions, not even millions, billions and billions and billions of people that have lived and died over millennia. I guess not millennia, but hundreds of thousands of years on planet Earth, and you don't see human bones get fossilized.
I was thinking about that earlier when we began this convo.
Right, and you can make the argument that our bones are too small and whatnot. Is what it is. But you mean to tell me that they're going to find this tiny little joint from a Dilophosaurus or a tooth from a dinosaur that's the size of your dog, but they know how to reconstruct that entire Dilophosaurus, which is 66 million years old, but they didn't know how, they couldn't find a human bone or a Neanderthal bone or these like full structures and fossils. They couldn't find like graveyards full of these things because all these people died. Like if all these battles had occurred, right, throughout ancient history, you'd find a battlefield full of dead bodies that eventually the earth would take at some point, right? Because it's just sitting there. Whether it's south, whether it's north, doesn't really matter. I think the narrative, I think the painting starts to come into play because when you create a story, right, and you do poke holes in it, it goes to the whole concept of the alien theory. Why are they so worried about telling us if aliens are real? What's the excuse they always use? Or real, not real.
Oh man, there's a million of them. One of the bigger ones is, it's the public can't handle the truth, right? If you knew what we know, it's just society as you know it would collapse around us. The banking system would fail, religion would fail, it would just be pure chaos.
I'll ask you the same question about JFK. They know who the killer is. Why wouldn't they just tell us?
That's a very valid point, right? It's the same narrative. If you knew what I knew, you wouldn't release it either.
Right. It is. And I think the reason for all of that becomes once you start to lie about something, you have to live in that bed of lies. You have to keep putting covers on top of it, on top of it, on top of it, and perpetuate that story. Because if you come back out and say that it's not true, there's going to be a lack of trust. And I understand the idea that science changes all the time and frauds are exposed and things shift. But there is an entire billion-dollar industry that is predicated on the idea that dinosaurs roamed this earth and gave us oil. And if they didn't roam this earth, we would not have oil. And if that is dispelled and that is told that, you know what, that's probably a crock of shit. There wasn't hundreds of millions of dinosaurs 66 plus million years ago, 66 to literally millions of years before that too. If that doesn't exist and our ground isn't just layered in dinosaur bones that created this oil for us, which again is another question. If the dinosaur fossils are the things that broke down and to create oil, why do any exist at all, right? So another hole in the story. But if that goes away, that destabilizes the oil market, that questions that. And then again, you start to look at the banking system gets impacted by that because the market starts to get impacted by dips in oil. And then the questions about energy, like why aren't we trying these alternative energies? You know, like, or worse off, if oil is now a renewable resource, why the hell aren't we drilling? And so I think those questions start to come up. And I think sometimes you see that in politics a little bit too, where, again, God help me if I use his name, we'll get locked off for another 6 months, but drill, baby, drill. We have it here. And there's certain people that want to drill it here because they know we got it for centuries. So even if it was a very limited resource, we got it long enough we could figure something out if we really wanted to, but they don't want to do that. And when they don't want to use what we have at our exposure to advanced technology, there's a motive behind it for me. And then that's when I start to have to look at the bigger picture, right? You're cannibalizing, you're creating scarcity intentionally when scarcity doesn't need to exist, and you're giving it a reason why. And then as you start to go past that, well, why would you do that? Well, because I think as soon as we realize that this isn't running out, well, that destabilizes that whole, I mean, that money train is done. Why would we interrupt that? We're living like the elites and they're doing what we're all trying to do. They're trying to live forever too, man. So they're going to use as much money as they can to pour into the research that they want. And they'll get that funding again when they run out of dinosaur bones because they're going to need some more money to research their black budget projects. But that is my absolutely wild conspiracy theory that got me down to dinosaurs, Mr. Phillips. How do you feel?
Well, I tell you what, I am certainly more intrigued than I was before we started this conversation, and I would love to have somebody on that has really done like a mega deep dive and is like an expert on the subject, if you will, to come on and really give us some good info. I that's a conversation I'd be interested in having. If anybody's listening to this and you are that guy or girl or whatever the fuck you want to identify as, hit us
we
up.
just do guys and girls here. Sorry.
Let us know. Listen to me. If you find an expert who identifies as a carrot, I'll fucking have him on. I don't care. Okay. I want to know more about this.
I don't know how honorable that person is, how trustworthy that person might be, how much we could take their word if that's what they're thinking. But nevertheless, the invitation
hit us up.
is open.
I want to know.
Yes. I am curious, and this is why I wanted to bring this up. I thought it was a silly, stupid, fun one, but I still want to believe in dinosaurs. I still am going to still love them. I'm going to play video games with them. I'm going to buy dinosaur figures. I'm going to always try to look online to find a dinosaur bone or something like that I know is fake so I can hang it up somewhere. But man, I love to think about the idea that this could all be fake and maybe there's something else out there. Mr. Phillips did our call out to all of our guests. So the only thing left is to ask each of you to head on over to cocktailsconspiracies.com, conspiracyrealist.com, youtube.com/@conspiracyrealist, which I'll probably be updating that, just Cocktails Conspiracies at this point too. Anywhere on social medias, you guys can find us. Spotify, we're over there too. Like us, subscribe us, follow us, comment. We do respond to just about every comment, except if you're being a complete dick. Then sometimes we respond and just be a dick back. Sometimes we just ignore you. Nevertheless, we appreciate the support. Until next time, everyone, raise your glass to mystery, an archaic, archaeological mystery, paleontologist mystery. I don't know.
To dinosaurs.
Mystery. You get the idea.
To dinosaurs.
To our friends, the dinosaurs. Not the mama. Is your website still stuck in 2009 or worse, built by your cousin's friend who kind of knows WordPress?
No! God, please, no!
It's time for an upgrade. At sfx.com, we specialize in custom web design, SEO, and full-service IT solutions tailored for small businesses that are ready to scale. Whether you're just starting out or reinventing your brand, the team at sfx.com brings strategy, style, and serious tech skills to every project. Visit s-fx.com today, where small businesses get big solutions.
Visit